On today's episode of the McCann Dogs Podcast,
you know, if I have a dog that I'm socializing, if I have a dog that is potentially going to have a fearful reaction, I need to prove to my dog that I am in charge and they need to either defer to me or I've got them and I will keep them safe. I need to be that leader. I need to be calm. I need to be able to take that breath and step up to the plate and say, I've got you. I'm going to direct you. You don't need to take life into your own hands.
and now, Instructor Shannon.
Today, we really need to talk about socialization, and I'm in the studio with Instructor Christine, aka Instructor Swanny, and we are lucky enough to have Instructor Carol joining us again this week, which is always a treat. I am Instructor Shannon, and the big topic on the floor today is socialization, and one of the reasons that we want to talk about this is that it is grossly misrepresented often in society that socialization is simply dogs playing with other dogs, and nothing could be further from the truth. If your socialization tactics include nothing but having your dogs play with other dogs or go to dog parks and play in big groups of dogs or even, big puppy socials, etc., you will likely end up hurting your relationship, overstimulating your dog, creating all sorts of bad manners when they see other dogs, etc. So we wanted to clarify, first of all, what really good socialization looks like in terms of people and dogs and stimuli that is not just solely related to people and dogs. All of the things that exist in our human world are going to be things that are foreign for our dogs in their natural world. So what we want to do with socialization is create dogs that are calm, cool, and collected around all of those different stimuli and around other dogs and other people, where we can choose to simply walk on past versus having to stop and say hello to every single dog because that's what the dog expects, etc. And we're going to talk today about socialization in terms of puppies, but we're also going to talk about socialization when it comes to dogs or puppies that are a little bit older and maybe have been under-socialized. So we will jump right into this today. So first thing that I want to do is get both of your opinions on what you think good socialization looks like. So I'm going to start with you, Instructor Carol.
For me, socialization is exposure, breadth of exposure in a very positive manner. So I don't want, puppies are so, or if you get a rescue dog, and some dogs are just one event is all it takes. So I want to make sure all of my dog's interactions are very positive, no bad interactions at all. And I want to make sure that the breadth of exposure is huge.
Perfect. And so what does a well-socialized dog look like to you?
So well-socialized dog to me looks confident. So they don't immediately get in a new environment and say, what can get me here? So when they move out, and that usually means they can focus on me. Now, right. I get often puppies are just distracted by everything, but fairly quickly, I want a good relationship. So if my pup can get out, focus on me instead of being worried, those ears back, and sort of tense. It also means that, if a person or dog approaches, they're very confident. They're not feeling, again, they're not showing that body language that they're tense and unsure. If a noise happens, they're not jumping out of their skin. If they see motion, they're just that confident zen, maybe not zen because most young dogs won't be, but I'm not seeing any of that nervous body language. Right. Absolutely, things are going to happen that may spook my dog.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing it very, very infrequently.
Right. And let's talk about that for a second before we really dive into the nitty gritty, because a dog that is well socialized and used to all sorts of different stimuli in their life, when they do get startled, what does that generally look like?
It's usually a very good rebound, right? And if I have a good relationship, they're not trying to take off. They'll look to me for guidance to say, is this okay? They're not trying to run behind my legs, they jump and then it's like, oh, okay, they read my body language, everything's okay.
Perfect. And Swanny, what would you say that a dog who has had poor socialization, what would their recovery look like?
There probably wouldn't be a recovery, at least not an immediate recovery. That's a dog that's trying to slip out of its collar, to panic and flee. They're pulling on their leash. You can't break through to them no matter what you say. They're just bent on getting away.
Yeah, total panic mode. So, and I want to be clear as well that over socializing can lead to a dog who is poorly socialized as well. So there are certainly things that can derail your progress when it comes to socialization. It's not just about creating as many different possibilities for your dog to experience as you can. It's about creating, as Instructor Carol said, as many different positive associations as possible. And a couple of bad experiences can really, really set you back with things. So when it comes to puppies, we know that the critical socialization window for puppies is from 3 to 12 weeks on average. And then socialization sort of tapers off into, it's still important, but that window, that from 8 weeks to 12 weeks when we brought our puppies home, that window is a critical window. And one thing that I want to talk about right away, unless you are in an area of the world that is endemic for things like parvo or different diseases, it is widely accepted by veterinary practices in North America that you can get your puppies out before they have completed their full course of vaccinations. Just do so with caution. I wouldn't go to a dog park, for example, with my young puppy and let them wander around there and sniff other feces and things like that, or play with other dogs and sniff their bums and, be exposed to things like that parvo areas that might impact my relation or my life with my dog. I want to make sure that I'm cautious with it, but we need to get our puppies out. We definitely need to expose them in that window from 8 weeks to 12 weeks. If you're unsure about the area that you're living in, I know that we have a worldwide audience, so check with the vets in the area because they will be able to talk to you about the incidence of parvo and the incidence of disease in the area that you should be very cautious of. And you'll need to find other ways to make sure that your dogs get good exposure, but generally keeping them inside until they are 16 weeks old and they've had their full course of vaccinations is usually widely accepted as a poor idea. Having said that, Carol, I'm going to start with you again. What are some of the must-dos for you when it comes to getting your young puppies out? And I know you don't have necessarily as many puppies as you've had older dogs, but I know that you have done a ton of training with lots of puppies with McCann dogs. So
yes. Yep. So, and with my own, definitely getting out. So, getting out to different places. We're creatures of habit. And I noticed this with my latest puppy, Texas, when she was young, especially with COVID hitting.
Yeah.
We tended to go, there's a place I go and hike because I know it's quiet. I'm not going to have loose dogs running at my dogs. But for her, she needed to go to different places. So when I hiked, trying to find different locations, because that's just going to a forest. Dogs know the difference. And same thing, I wouldn't normally go to a downtown area to walk, but hey, I live more rural, so I need to take a trip into a place that's a little more populated. So thinking about different locations, because that's bang for buck. I get so many different things, exposure. So, and some of it at home is just with COVID, especially setting up some things. So, just moving things in the house. I have a little 4-foot bear statue. So one day it was in the living room holding an umbrella.
You have a 4-foot bear statue?
Yeah, maybe 3 foot. Yeah, it's cool. It's a little carving. It's a little bear carving.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I can picture that now.
Yes.
That's great.
So one day he's holding an umbrella in the living room. The next day he might be wearing a hat in the hallway. I put a Roomba out in the backyard in a Rubbermaid. So when she went out, there's something making noise, tied balloons to a tree.
Fantastic.
So just, and I want positive. So go out and we walk where she can barely even hear this noise. We're just comfortable. I'm relaxed. She sort of sees it. It's like, what is that? Oh, it's okay. And then, it probably took us half an hour before we're up close. And then she's sniffing the box and looking at the Roomba going and totally comfortable. So I don't want to, like you said, it's not about exposure. Yeah. Let's walk her up to this box and have her terrified or nervous. It's let's move at a really slow pace, read her body language, but just, looking different places, different noises.
Yeah. That's fabulous. And you, there's one of our YouTube videos that you made during COVID with Texas as a puppy is basically a socialization obstacle course, so to speak, where there's Tickle Me Elmo dolls sitting there. There's umbrellas. There's all sorts of things in this video. You can find that on our YouTube channel if you're curious to see the socialization efforts that go into our dogs outside of just other people and other dogs. Swanny, what about you? What are sort of the areas that you try to hit or things that you try to make sure that you've exposed your puppies to?
Well, I'm a city dweller, and I like the city. And one of the reasons I have dogs is I very much enjoy walking. Now, I enjoy hiking, but I like walking through the city too. I like looking at people's houses and their landscaping, and I find the city very interesting in the architecture. So I want my puppies to be good in the city.
Okay.
And I also, when my son was young, I knew we were going to spend a lot of time, waiting for Ty at sports games. We're going to spend a lot of time waiting to pick him up from school. We're going to be having a lot of children coming over to our house. So I wanted my dog to be exposed to the sights and the sounds of the city, the sights of children, the sound of children. I also, because I'm in the city, I want my dogs to ignore other dogs.
Yes.
I'm not interested in having to stop on my walks and say hello to other dogs and people. So when we're on our city walks, I want my dog to say, look, there's another dog, but you know what? They mean nothing to me.
Neutral.
Let's walk past and ignore.
Yeah.
But be confident.
Yes, and be confident. Yes.
Absolutely. And let's talk about that for a second. Why do you not let your dogs or your puppies say hello to everything and everyone?
Well, when I'm walking with my children down the street, I don't expect everybody to stop and say hi to my children.
Pet them.
And pet them. I don't expect my child to run up to every child on the street. So why would I allow my dog to do that?
Yeah.
So it's...
Yeah. And there's an inherent danger that comes along with that. And we touched very briefly already on the idea that you can have bad socialization. And there is a potential when you're meeting strangers or strange dogs, there's a potential for that interaction to go awry. So I am 100% with you. I don't take that chance because sometimes all it takes is one really bad event to set you back months or even a lifetime. So I like to make sure that I don't take those chances. Right. If my puppies are going to say hello to or be in a situation where they can play with other dogs or other puppies, I have a very specific set of criteria rules that they are going to have to meet. And that includes me knowing the dog is friendly, because let's face it, unfortunately, sometimes people don't necessarily know if their dogs are really friendly or not. Right. They misread body language. And sometimes people will be embarrassed by that. So they hold back the truth. You hear this, oh, he's friendly, it's okay. And you see this dog that is clearly on the edge, on the verge of a problem behavior. And I don't want my puppy to be at that expense. Right. I don't want my puppy's confidence to be lost at the expense of a strange dog that I'll never see again, that will never have any bearing on my life after that.
Dogs have different play styles too.
Yes.
I remember once, my dogs have always been kind of chase and play tag with each other. And, I can't remember where I was one time, and Honda got barrel rolled by a pug that wanted to wrestle with him. And right away, I'm like, no. Like, this is not Honda's play style, and nobody's barrel rolling little Honda. So
he's got you in his corner. Right. Excellent.
And the pug was having fun. That's just how it played, by crashing and slamming. But no, I'm not having my dog get crashed and slammed.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's one of the rules that are on my list. I have to know the dog's play style, and I have to know that it's going to match my dog's play style. So I think that is incredibly important. Carol, what do you think about dog to dog play? What's your general
It's
take?
interesting. And I've changed a little bit. Initially, I'm very black and white. So initially mine was absolutely, I wanted exposure. My first actually experience was getting a potbelly pig. Fred. Right. So Fred was going to come to the dog school, and plus with him, I hiked. I went to car shows, so he was in both city and country environments. I wanted him confident and well trained, and the dog school was great. But my socialization, my exposure was him sitting on the back of the truck with me, and anytime he looked and a dog went past and he looked at the dog, I said yes, and I gave him a reward.
I love that.
So there was no chance of any negative interaction, but he became, oh, I see a dog, that's a real positive. So just at a distance created that positive. So I have always wanted that confidence. I want my pups to see me as the most important thing in the world, right? So, and I also want them to understand that they don't, if I just let them meet every dog, they're going to be the dog barrel rolling pretty soon, often, right?
Yeah.
But that's not appropriate at all for my dog to interact that way. So early on with puppies, I tended to have very little dog to dog. They would be around them, we would hike, but it was understand you don't bother other dogs. And I still do that with Texas, but I did change a little bit. I do think it's important to understand what my puppy's play style is like, so that I understand when a dog comes running up, are they going to be intimidated? Even though I know there's no danger, some dogs could be terrified just by being rolled, right?
Right.
So, okay, this dog obviously means no harm. My dog's going to be okay. I don't need to freak them by grabbing them, or this is going to freak my dog. So finding an older dog that I totally trusted, that was very experienced around puppies, wasn't going to interact and play actually much at all, but very much reinforced Texas's manners, that you don't just come jump on me.
Yeah.
Or you don't just come and bite me. That's not the way you interact with another dog. So she got to learn some good manners, and it was interesting watching. It took a while. She was a slow learner on jumping, and then she started barking. And then she was like, okay, this is not working. This dog just keeps pushing me away. And so then and of course I'm mortified. My dog is annoying another dog. And the owner was, no, you're good. And then, she eventually was very calm, and the dog actually went and got a tug toy and brought it over and interacted in a little bit of play with Texas. So showed her how to behave, the proper signals around another dog. I also got to see a little bit more of her play style, what it was like, so I understand it. And then she's had very, very slight interaction, maybe 2 or 3 other dogs with play, and usually very time limited in situations where I know she's going to be great, where there's lots of space, where I don't want my dogs interacting with a new dog in a tiny space where there's a lot of pressure.
Of course.
So I like a little bit, but it's really more about setting her up for the future. I think people feel that their dogs have to play. I do privates with dogs that are actually terrified or not comfortable at all. And people seem to feel that dogs have to play, but it's like kids or adults. Yeah. Some of us are less social. I'm not into big parties.
Yeah, me too.
Right. Yes.
That's our dog. So I want to understand what my dog wants. And my interaction is about long-term safety and confidence and well-being, not about this is going to be the recreation. I mean, all of my dogs are happy to visit with other dogs. They'll play occasionally. Yeah. But I tell you, if I even look like I want to do something, they're like, no, I want to interact with you, not necessarily any other dog.
Yes.
And for the most part, there's only select dogs they really want to interact. They want a dog that, again, is appropriate play style.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. They want a play that they're going to enjoy versus being bowled over, etc. So Honda at 14, instructor Christine. So can you think back to the 8 to 12 week mark?
He was very cute.
I bet he was.
Very cute, yes. Now, we had another dog at the time, but there was an extreme size difference. Honda was very tiny, and Cowboy, my Saluki, was very big.
Right.
So, and Cowboy being a sight hound, a breed that is, bred to run down rabbits and grab them quick and, dispose of them.
Right.
I did not want Cowboy suddenly taking off after little Honda.
Yeah, predatory drift.
Yeah, and instinct grabbing in this little fluffy puppy. So they were 2 dogs that lived together, but really never played together because it was just something I never felt comfortable with.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good call because it is something that we underestimate. The predatory drift factor is something that often is, it's a sudden slap in the face out of the blue. You might have a bigger dog and a little dog that play together very nicely, but then all of a sudden there's this, just shift in mentality and things go awry because you are dealing with predators and those instincts when they kick in. Now,
so you see that happening at dog parks.
Yeah.
Often.
It's one of the reasons they started to split dog parks, small dogs versus large dogs.
Yes.
One, the predatory drift is more likely to happen with a small dog because it seems more prey-like.
Absolutely.
But the damage, and I think, for those of you that don't know the term, a lot of people say, oh, my dog's lovely, but understanding they're animals. And there are responses that come out that are just hardwired. It's no different than us when we're under threat, that fight or flight, right? Way back, humans would have to be, and were violent, in many cases to survive. With dogs, that can come out. So you may have the sweetest dog in the world. it still may in that instant flip that switch, either because it's predatory drift and that predatory nature's just clicked in, or especially, you know, those dogs that love to chase balls, they're sweet dogs, but sometimes that's that predatory nature. When they want to chase, it can go too far. Doesn't mean it's a bad dog at all.
That's absolutely
especially if another dog starts to squeal. Say you think, oh, my dog's afraid, I better bring it to the dog park. Well, if your dog suddenly starts to scream in fear and run away, now it sounds like a wounded animal.
Yeah.
And it can, a pack mentality.
Absolutely.
I worked at a veterinary emergency hospital, and I saw some very, very sad things that happened at dog parks to little dogs. Like very sad things that will haunt me. So please, if you have a little dog, or a fearful dog, yes, that's not your answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I want to talk about that for a minute, that fearful dog going to the leash-free park, because that is often something that, you know, if somebody has a dog who is either fearful or stimulated or aggressive potentially, a lot of times people, well-meaning people, will give you terrible advice that says, you know, oh, just go take him to the dog park, let him work it out, or go let him play with the other dogs, let him work it out. And that is probably the worst advice you could ever get. Tell us why, Carol.
Oh, yes. It's, one for those fearful dogs. So one, with the dog park, I know we've had a couple of students, and they take their dogs to the dog park, even though we say those dogs should never be off leash because they're aggressive, and people, well, I have to give my dog exercise, or as Shannon said, many people don't know, they don't see the signs. So when you're, letting your dog interact, we need to be so cautious. But with a fearful dog, who one bad instance is going to be the end of any confidence they have often, we need to be so cautious. And a lot of times people think exposure will make things better, but it's the type of exposure.
Yes.
For anybody that's terrified of rats or spiders, flooding, putting you in a room with thousands of rats crawling over you is likely not going to let you work out that problem.
Right.
Ooh.
Yes.
It's that's not what we want. We need positive exposure, which is actually under the dog's threshold. So it's being maybe 50 feet from a dog, and that nervous dog seeing that dog and saying, I'm okay. We want them to rehearse that. I'm okay. Same with people. A lot of times people, oh, my dog's nervous of people, so I'm going to have them, hey, can you give my dog a cookie? And then they say, I don't know why it's not getting better. People have been feeding them all week. But even though the dog's maybe gotten that cookie, they're not like us. They don't rationalize, people are good, they give me cookies, nobody hurt me. In that instance, they're rehearsing, I'm terrified. And they're sort of like, phew, I got it this time. But they've rehearsed hundreds, if not thousands of times in that week, I'm being afraid of people.
Yes.
They can't rationalize after the event.
Yeah, absolutely. And they start to do that approach and retreat. So they'll go in and they'll snatch the cookie really quickly and then retreat again. And as you just said, it's simply rehearsing that fearful response each and every time. You would be much better off to have the person neutrally facing away from the dog, not putting any social pressure on them at all, and maybe just tossing a cookie, 5 or 10 feet out to the side. So, this person brings good things, but I'm not forced to confront that fear. I'm not forced to relive that fear over and over again just to get that good thing. So that's a better way of approaching things. But sometimes that's even we're not going to get into like extreme cases of fear and whatnot. If you have extremes on either end, whether it's fearful or aggressive, those extremes need to be dealt with an individualized program with a professional. And I can't stress that enough. You really need the advice that is going to work for that dog in that moment. And you need to be working with somebody that can stop you in your tracks in that moment, because that's not working well for this dog, or this is working great for this dog. It's a little outside the box than what we usually do, but every dog is an individual, so let's keep doing this tactic. You need somebody who's going to be able to help you assess those things. Blanket advice just out of the box is not going to work well in those situations. So do definitely seek out a professional if you're dealing with any extremes. If you have a little bit of a shy puppy, or if you have a little bit of a stimulated dog, those are things that we can definitely work with tactics and with blanket advice and information.
Head on over to the McCann Dog Training YouTube channel, where Instructor Carol will teach you how to create a do-it-yourself obstacle course for socialization using items from your own home. Happy training!
So I want to talk about the flooding thing for a bit. I have an analogy that I like to use when I'm trying to describe flooding to people, and I love the spiders in the room, etc. The analogy that I like to use is very literally about flooding, like water flooding. So if you think about a flood, and there's lots of that happening in the world today, so it's very much on the top of all of our minds, I believe. If you think about that scenario, that is incredibly overwhelming right off the bat. It's very obvious that that is going to be overwhelming. When we talk about adding a little bit of exposure in a positive way where the puppy goes, what is that? Oh, I'm okay. What is that? Oh, I'm okay. And systematically we bump it up and up and up. So I liken that to the sprinkles. You know, you're out for a walk and you go, oh, did a bit of rain just hit me in the forehead? Is it raining? And you look up and you're like, oh, okay, well, I barely noticed that. And you move on with your life. Maybe there's a little bit of a heavier rainfall where you definitely feel 3 or 4 sprinkles on your forehead. And you're like, oh, okay, you know what? I'm not really wet yet. I'm good. I can still remain outside. And then you can slowly build your tolerance to that water until you get to the point where the flooding is there. You're in front of a lake and you're not afraid of the water anymore. You know, it's no big deal because you've systematically learned to appreciate water for what it is, that it's not a scary thing, and that you can exist around the water, even if you don't necessarily want to interact with the water. Maybe you don't like swimming, but you like sitting on the dock and watching the water, and you're not afraid to do that anymore, you know, because you've worked through that fear. So just building a little bit of a ladder and adding bit by bit by bit, 1 raindrop, then 2, then 3, then 4. And eventually you're going to get to the point where you can enjoy sitting on the dock, drinking your beverage.
Shannon, would that be the same with clowns in you?
Oh my
If I bring one
I was thinking that
clown,
a room of the clown.
I think that you would have to like bring in a clown hair. And I can sit with that on my desk for a week and like look sideways at it. But I don't know. I don't know that I was actually on the news this morning. There was some sort of a parade event with a whole bunch of clowns somewhere else in the world. And I actually walked away from the TV because I was like, I can't do this. I can't even watch this.
Can we put a photo of a clown on your desk? No.
Maybe. Maybe. I should
We'll
try it.
desensitize
Yes,
Shannon
Shannon to clowns. Yes. Yeah. By the end of this year, this room will be filled with clowns.
We'll do a podcast
Some might
episode
say
about
there
it.
are 3 now.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail right on the head there, Carol. Oh my goodness.
Shannon, one thing I'd like to talk about that we haven't talked about is sort of building physical confidence. And
Yes,
it ties nicely
please.
because we're now teaching parkour.
Yeah.
So it's something I've worked actually with Fred very much, interaction with the environment itself, which was really increased his confidence. So, and I've worked with so many fearful dogs over the years. And it's one of the tactics. One, learning to interact with the environment. One, when dogs go out, there's so much value. Instead of what can get me, it's like, oh, I could jump on top of that. Oh, I could go underneath
What
that. Oh, I could
opportunities
run
do I have?
along that. So it changes their mindset. It builds their confidence in achievement. And I found too, it really builds the relationship and the trust. If I, like everything, slow is fast. We talked about all of this. I don't want a bad experience. And it might simply be that my dog can get on a 1-inch piece of foam rubber. Sounds not too exciting, but if we build the value there and then we keep building that value, and then my dog says, when you ask me to do something, it's always safe. So now I ask them to do something and they're like, I'm not sure. I don't put on pressure. There's a way we do this. And suddenly the dog's doing it and they feel good about it. It's like us, if we're pushed when we're not ready to do something, you know, public speaking, it usually goes bad.
Yes.
And we hate the person that forced us.
Yeah,
but,
no doubt.
you know, if we're pushed when we're ready for something, but we just need that extra nudge, we celebrate that victory with that person. So, and we're doing the parkour now. I've had so many people say in 1 week, the change in confidence and their relationship is unbelievable. I'm excited because we have a YouTube video that will probably be out in the next week or two. We did with a dog named Juno, who's quite nervous. And it was interesting. We worked together. I think the video will show a nice change over there. Even with her, it was interesting at the beginning with the person with the camera at 20 feet away. Juno was very aware of that and even sort of hiding a little bit. And by the end, the cameraman's out and he's right beside Juno, and she's willing to take a treat from him.
Fabulous.
Oh,
and
wow.
to be
Yeah.
right beside
Juno,
him.
yeah.
I know the owner was couldn't believe it. So I'm anxious to see the video. And it was interesting. So we used a couple of parkour activities.
Okay.
And then, so but then you see the confidence with myself. I mean, suddenly she was interacting with me. Even if I didn't have food, I'm able to pet her. When we finish, she's able to interact with the person with the camera. So her whole confidence came up with one session.
Amazing.
Of working together as a team.
Yes.
So break that down a little bit for us. So describe what the, what was the set like? How did you make sure that she wasn't getting overexposed to anything? Like, how did you set her up for success?
We worked outside. Normally, I would suggest with people, they start inside where there's not a lot of distraction and where the dog's very comfortable. But in this case, we're at our studio. So it's a pretty comfortable studio, but it's still, walls mean pressure and there's different smells. So we said, we talked to the owner and felt, she's pretty comfortable outside. So we went outside. You could see she was aware, but she wasn't over threshold. And then we started out with some activities. And one thing we wanted to make sure was we started with something easy. We also, whenever we're dealing with something that's fearful, it's important we don't add pressure. And as humans, we want to, our dog's afraid of something, this table. So we take a treat. Come on, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Come on, get it. And for some dogs, my potbelly pig, Fred, pull out a cookie. So if he was nervous, pull out a cookie, walk him up. That was fine.
Yeah.
But for most dogs, now we're adding pressure of something they're nervous for.
Right.
I always talk the example, you two decide to go hang gliding. So Swanny's ahead of me.
Let's do it.
And
I'm in.
Swanny's keen, but she's nervous. And I'm behind her and I'm going, come on, you got to go. It's your turn. Go. That's going to cause the opposite effect. So with our dogs, come on, you could do it. Come on, I'm here. We think we're helping the dog, encouraging, but it actually does some pressure. So we did some interesting things in the video. When the dog actually interacted, we actually throw away from the object.
Okay.
So avoiding that back away
Takes the
instinct.
pressure.
I touched this. Oh, I'm not sure. So as soon as the dog interacted, we actually, and we threw the treat away. The other thing is, people think, okay, if I want my dog to like this table, I'm going to get the dog up on the table and reward 15 times. But for most dogs, you put the Burke on there, he's going to get 2. Forget he's on a table. He's just thinking about the food.
Yep.
But if I reward him 15 times for coming onto the table, he's going to have way more value. So a lot of nuggets on how to build value for activities, how to take off pressure. The other thing is, he comes on once and he just sort of sniffs it. We throw away. Okay, that was safe. He sniffs it again. That was safe. Okay, now I'm willing to sniff further or put a paw on. And we slowly build. It was interesting. We had a little bit we hit sort of a threshold and we said, okay, so let's change activities. And then when we were done, I said, it looks like she's got a little bit more. So let's try back some of what we did at the beginning.
Okay.
And I won't give away the ending. So,
I'm eager to see it.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was great to see progression with her and the techniques on how to take pressure away. Because for so many dogs, some of them, if you got one of those, they're nervous and you can show them a treat and walk them up. Great. But so many dogs, that's not the case.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you can simplify it, by all means, simplify it. But it's so important to look at the results that you're getting. And if you are trying that and your dog is not making progress, or your puppy is getting more and more worried or more disengaged from the situation, it's important to adjust your tactics. So speaking of which, if we have a puppy that we are working on socialization with, and there's not necessarily a fear issue there, are you taking a different approach to these things?
Yes and no. I judge my pup because in some cases it's sort of the same we would with kids or with people. There's a clown. So if there was a clown outside,
Does it
in the
have to be
field,
clowns?
Yeah, and it's 60 feet away, and you come out, and it's like, I don't want to go to the car. I'd be, Shannon, suck it up, right? Like, you can do it, because that's probably all you'd need. And you'd probably thank me. I was acting like an idiot. Thank you for, kicking my butt. But if we went out and there's like 40 clowns in a circle,
Oh yeah, you won't even have time to address me.
You'd be gone. I'd be gone. Yeah. So it's judging my pup in the situation. I'm also aware of what the interaction might be. Actually, it was sort of funny, although stupid. I remember having Texas when she was quite young, probably a year, and I was demoing in class and talking about, because we have in one of the classes I do the stations, and one's a little bit of a confidence builder. So one was just having your dog jump up and touch this slippery barrel. So it's a barrel and it moves a little bit and slippery. So I said, some dogs, if they jump up, they're going to be quite confident, but when it moves or it's slippery or it makes a little noise, they might be startled. So I try to proactively throw away. But as I'm explaining what might happen, she jumped up and went, "Oh!"
Perfect demo.
Right. Yes. And I was like, no, but she has great recovery and is confident. So that 2 seconds later, she was happy to do it again. She was just surprised it moved. Sort of like us. Oh, I didn't expect that. Right. My analogy would be, are you ever pulling in and somebody pulls out? And that's feeling that you're out of control in your car.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
actually,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
That happened to me the other day beside your vehicle because you have that quite a big van, and I was parked beside your vehicle, and I had taken the emergency brake off my vehicle, and I was looking for something on my phone to put on before I pulled out of the parking lot. And I didn't realize that I was rolling backwards as that was happening. And I thought your vehicle was rolling forwards and you weren't in the driver's seat. And it totally panicked me for a second to the point where I was pushing the clutch instead of the brake because I was I was just so discombobulated. And still, I pushed the clutch in and the vehicle didn't stop rolling. I was like, hey, wait a minute. I need the brake. Okay, we're good.
But your recovery was probably immediate.
It was pretty good. Yeah, I have to say it was pretty good.
We have that. There's a split second where things just don't make sense to us. We are startled. But then, it's like a bird buzzes by my head. I'm startled. But it doesn't ruin my day. Exactly. An hour later, I'm not shaking and looking for birds coming at me.
Yes.
So that's, that was Texas. She jumped, and then she went, oh, okay, now I know it's going to move, and jumped right back up. But it was like, you idiot, I was just talking about what could happen. And I didn't address it. But that's a type of thing where, and if I knew she might be less confident, I probably wouldn't have even talked about it without it doing it. But that for a dog, I could say is a potential case where they might be startled, especially a young dog. I'm going to avoid those because I want their trust in me, because I want them to always think when I'm asking is safe. So, but if I have, so it's that same as with a person. I'm going to walk you past one clown in a different distance. Mm-hmm. I'm going to judge the situation on whether I need to take pressure off with my dog.
Yeah. Yeah, good call. And let's avoid the whole clown. Do you know that that's a really common fear?
I've heard that.
It's one of the most common fears. Right. I think that those of us that are frightened of clowns just watched it as kids, far too young. It was far too young for the restricted rating.
There's that one exposure that didn't go well. Right?
Yes. Exactly.
Right, yes.
Money penny.
Yeah.
Money penny? Pennywise.
Yes. I'm not afraid of clowns just in general environments, but if I went into a haunted house and there was a haunted house clown, I would be very afraid of that one.
Oh yeah, those ones are terrifying too. See, and I do like haunted houses.
You do,
but I get particularly frightened when there's a clown.
We went through, remember, we were clutched to each other. Yeah. Walking through.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Most recently, we were going through one of the corn maze ones, and this would have been the most recent Halloween that just passed. And I can be a little bit of a goofball in those situations. And I said to the people that I was with, this would be a perfect scenario for an actual axe murderer to set up in, because everybody would just be like, oh, it's another scary guy. Yeah. It's another scary actor in the maze. So, of course, I freaked all of us out even more than we were already freaked out. That's not good socialization.
No.
All right, so back to socialization.
How about sounds?
Yeah.
Socializing to sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about that. What's your tactics?
Well, I like to expose my dogs gradually to noises and create positive associations with them.
Perfect. So, and how do you do that?
Well, walking in the city, there's going to be buses. There's going to be trucks going by. Horns, yeah, yes. And they're unpredictable. Mm-hmm. So I can't go out and walk along a main street and predict when the bus is, well, I guess you can predict sort of a bus.
There is bus schedules.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm just thinking.
People rely on those. But no, you can't.
Right, exactly.
There might be a garbage truck. There might be another truck with air brakes. Yeah, there's all sorts of things.
Even if I lived on a main street, I'm going to make my puppies' first exposures on side streets where there's, not cars going by all the time, where there's not buses. So they can hear them in the distance, and I can reward them for hearing the noises, but I'm not overwhelming them with the sounds.
Perfect. And what are you looking for in that situation? What sort of signs are you watching for from your puppy that they're okay?
Well, I'm looking for them to hear the sound and be confident. I don't want them to pin their ears back or suddenly, cringe or to turn tail and start to run. Those are signs that the puppy is afraid. And now I'm too close. I'm overwhelming the puppy. I'm not being a good dog owner. So I'm going to back off and be sure my puppy can handle these sounds confidently.
Perfect. So what does back off look like?
Back off means create distance.
Okay.
Yes. So I am going to skedaddle out of that area.
Maybe find a quieter street.
Street. I'm going to move to an area that my puppy can handle the sound.
Perfect. Yeah. And these are all things that they fall under the socialization checklist. You really want to make sure that you've exposed your puppy to not only the things that they're going to see in day-to-day life, but also some extra things so that they get used to the idea that novel stimulus is not a big deal. They practice seeing, startling, recovering in some cases. Like, these are all really valuable tactics that a lot of times people will really want to avoid any sort of stress that they might put on the dogs. And while we definitely want to avoid massive amounts of stress for our dogs, it's not a bad thing for them to identify stress, work through stress, and then recover from that. It gives them good resilience. It gives them good skills in the future. Carol, any tactics that you have for sort of pushing the envelope with a little bit of pressure in a safe way that you know will be productive for your dogs?
Yeah, Chris used a great term, predictable, right? Dogs don't like unpredictability. And you're right, I still remember Earl here standing at the window, not nervous, but just really interested once. And it's like, there's nothing there. Till 10 minutes later, a hot air balloon came past. So he could hear that at a distance. And we can hear them more in close, right?
That's impressive.
So that's a very different sound. So a dog, you want the dogs, one he'd never heard, but those being novel stimuli aren't bad. One of the things I like to do is have my dogs actually make the noise. So a kid's little cheap piano knocking over, a water bottle, knocking over a tin can, because then it's predictable because they're causing it. So they know where the noise is coming from. So, and then I'll often reward them. So you knock over that water bottle, it makes that whoop noise.
What kind of noise?
Actually,
that was pretty
Steve
good.
says that's Thorpe is the sound of a water bottle hitting the ground. The name of my dog. He says, what sort of name is that? It's the sound of a water bottle hitting the ground. But or they make a ding. It might be some chimes or something. So again, starting gradually, something that's not making a lot of noise, but the dogs realize them making the noise is actually going to earn them a reward. So you can get to a lot of different noises. So you can get far more extreme in that, like you said, that controlled environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I startled one of my dogs once. I can't remember who it was, at a vending machine. It's like, oh, it's hot. I want a pop. So put my money in, and my dog's just standing looking around. And when the pop falls, it makes quite a noise.
It does.
I remember my dog like jumping out of their skin for that second. Like,
Oh,
whoa,
my
what was
goodness.
that? We're being attacked by pop. Yes. And so then it was like, yes, we need to work on this. So I made an excuse to buy some more pops and a chocolate bar.
There we go. And some chips and some pretzels. It's candy usually for Swanny. Swanny likes candy.
Yes. So that's an unpredictable noise, but it's something that we can help our dogs through.
Yeah, absolutely. And helping our puppies learn that some of these noises in the environment are not a bad thing, they're in fact a really good thing, can go a long way. And that is the positive exposure end. So, if I was walking down the street with my dog and I know it's garbage day in my neighborhood and the garbage truck I can hear is, 2 blocks over, I'm going to make sure that that is a very pleasant experience for my pup. So whether I have lots of food raining down, whether we're working on tricks in that moment so that they're focused on me and kind of hearing this noise in the background, or whether we're maybe tugging at that moment so that they learn that noise means good things are going to happen. All of those things are going to be good tactics to help my puppy, provided that they're under threshold, they're not overwhelmed. If they are sort of getting towards the aware point where they're hearing the noise and they're kind of looking and trying to figure out where it is, that's the point where I want to make sure that I am using that good stress to say, hey, you hear that noise? Guess what? That means bacon's coming, or that means my tug toy's coming out and we're going to have a party. So now this noise becomes the predictor of good things versus the noise just being this abstract, frightening thing that they don't necessarily know how to identify. And once I have that system in place and my puppy can hear that noise from a distance and look to me for whatever wonderful reward is coming, now I can move them closer to that noise and make it a more invasive thing without losing that, comfort with the noise, etc.
There's 3 zones there. So there's the zone where you said get out of there. Or what did you say? What's your turn?
My
Back. The building distance. You had a term for that.
Back. Create distance.
Back off.
Back off. Back off.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes.
there's our back off. My dog is clearly over threshold. I'm not going to be able to bring him down. So I need to get him out of that situation. There's the sort of green zone that says, my dog's interacting. Clearly that noise is audible to him because they hear better than us, but he is totally not paying attention to it at all, right? Then he's fine with that noise and it's all a good thing. Or there's that one pivotal moment where they're aware, but they haven't gone to like, oh, I need to flee. And that's where we can make that noise positive.
Yes.
What we don't want to do on that moment where I think a lot of people, it's okay. It's okay. So it sounds like we're praising them. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay. I don't want to be telling them they're okay. Oh, don't be silly. Get that toy. Yeah.
Yes.
What's
Love
that?
it.
Yeah.
Love it.
You know, or as soon as they look, yes, you know, so that yes, looking at that thing was right. Get the toy or get the food. Now, if my dog says I can't take that food or toy, I don't want to be that used car salesman or add pressure. Come on, get that toy, get that toy. So now they're nervous. It's like someone in a dark alley, 2 a.m, somebody's coming towards them in a dark hoodie with the hood up, and they're alone. And I'm saying, hey, listen to me, look away from that, right? No, they need to look. So it's that understanding which of those 3 zones your dog's in so that your response is appropriate, right?
Absolutely.
I had a dog that was the complete opposite. She wanted to bite noises. My Malinois Sabre. So
That's really interesting.
she wanted to bite noises. So when we were, say someone was playing baseball and my husband played baseball, so we'd often go to watch the games, the crack of the bat, that noise, she
I
just
bet.
wanted to get that.
I had a
love
dog
that
like that
noise.
too, that crack.
Right.
That's a
and
great
or
noise.
catching a ball into the baseball glove, that slap, I must bite that baseball glove. So she was very stimulated by noise and wanted to bite noises. So and even thunder. She would go outside in a thunderstorm and be jumping into the air and barking and gnashing her teeth. She was very stimulated by loud noises in a very I'm going to get that noise way.
Wow. I love the noise of a baseball being hit by a bat. Sort of like I love the smell of gasoline, right? It's one of those weird things
yes.
that lots of people really like.
I like the gas smell when you're at a dock, a boat, like that fishing boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so nostalgic to me for being up at the...
I can see that.
Yeah.
I want to touch on something that you mentioned, Carol, and that was the way you were talking to your dog when they were in that scary moment, right? That it's okay, it's okay. If I am in a room and I'm stuck in this room and there is a clown in this room and then there's Carol.
There is a sliding glass door there. There
Could be. Who knows? Who knows what might be in there? Yes. So there's Carol on one side of the room and I'm afraid. I'm going to look. I'm stuck in this room. There's a clown. I'm going to look for somebody who can help me in that scenario. And the person that can help me is the person who's standing there going, you know what? I'm not afraid of this clown. This is not a big deal. And I'm going to offer you something to distract you from that clown, or I'm going to offer you something to help contend with that clown. I am not going to try to soothe you with this soft voice that makes you think that I sound worried too. And I am not going to try to pick you up and console you. And, oh, you poor thing. You're so scared. You poor thing. Like, I don't want to be protected by that person because that person sounds frightening to me as well. So I want the person who is calm, cool, and confident, who can offer me that party moment. You know, Carol was talking about the play voice, etc. As long as my puppy is going to buy into that and be like, okay, we're okay, then those are the tactics that I want to use. And if I sound like I'm worried too, or if I sound like I'm a poor leader, my puppy is not going to want to look to me for advice and safety. And that, unfortunately, is damaging to the relationship. A lot of the times it makes the puppy think that you bring along these things that are scary as well. And it brings your leadership status down in their eyes, where they can't look to you and they can't confidently trust that you are going to keep them safe. So
Right. Yes. You always look to the most confident person in the room.
exactly.
That's, why, we trust police officers. If something's, falling apart, I'm going to be with the firemen, or I'm going to be with that police officer because they're calm, they're confident, they're in control.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're the ones that in that situation are going to give you good advice.
Right. Yes.
The other thing is, animals, especially, it's body language. So they read off the body language. So one of the things, it's tough, especially if we see our dog getting nervous or there's a history our dog's going to be afraid and we think that, we tense up.
Yes.
But just sort of like being relaxed. It's not necessarily what I say often, oh, don't be silly. I try to look like I'm ultra relaxed. Yawning is your friend, right? When you yawn, you're relaxed. And dogs, for people, yawning is contagious, but same for dogs. So, just sigh, yawn.
I want to yawn.
Relax your body.
She's stifling it.
Relax your body language, because the dogs will feed off our body language. If they see us as a good leader and we have that great relationship, our dogs look to us. And if we're totally relaxed, then they're not going to be. Think about yourself. If you're nervous and then you look over and the person beside you is nervous, there's a reason to be nervous.
Right.
But if you look around a group and nobody else is nervous, maybe I'm being silly.
Yes,
Right.
Absolutely. Yes. And I think that these are things that often need to be practiced by the human outside of the dog situation, because they can be hard as well. Some of us are anxious by nature. Some of us are overreactive by nature. We all have our natural tendencies. So if you have a situation with your dog where you need to help them by being calm yourself, sometimes looking into like meditation techniques or yoga breath techniques, some of these tactics that you can practice as a way of regulating your own nervous system when you're in that anxious state will go a long way. And if you can be a better leader and a better confidant for your dog who's a little bit nervous, then you are going to be able to help them so much more in that situation. So if you know that your personality, and I'm very much like this, I can be very emotional, I can be very reactive. So I do a lot of these things. Like this is life experience for me that I'm talking about meditation techniques and yoga breath and things like that, because I rely on those things for my own day to day. When I'm frequently when I'm driving in my little car and I have a tailgater behind me, I feel the tension in my body just starting to rise and rise and rise. And I get to the point where I become potentially a poor driver myself, because all I'm doing is looking in the rearview mirror and focusing on this thing that makes me anxious. So in those moments, I practice my deep breaths. I practice looking forward and reminding myself that I'm in control of this situation. There's absolutely nothing that I can do about the situation happening behind me. If it's really bad, I can pull off the road and let that person pass me and go whatever blazing speed they would like to go. But me panicking in that scenario isn't going to do anybody any good, including myself. So practicing those techniques has made me an exponentially better driver. And I drive a lot. I put a lot of kilometers on my vehicle. So I need to be a good driver, and I need to be calm and relaxed and not get into that anxious state. And the same would be said of my dog training. If I have a dog that I'm socializing, if I have a dog that is potentially going to have a fearful reaction, I need to make sure, or any sort of reaction, anything where I need to prove to my dog that I am in charge and they need to either defer to me or I've got them and I will keep them safe, I need to be that leader. I need to be calm. I need to be able to take that breath and step up to the plate and say, I've got you. I'm going to direct you. You don't need to take life into your own hands. And me not being a good leader leaves my pup out there on their own to fight for their own skin. So I want to circle back a little bit just to the exposure point, because I think that's really the big takeaway from today is how to properly expose puppies. So in terms of, we talked about dog-to-dog play. I think all of us are on the same page in that we don't do a lot of dog-to-dog play. We're very calculated about how we do it. And
I got a dog for me.
Exactly.
I didn't get a dog for the neighborhood. It's for me.
Yeah. And a lot of the times when we are misguided in thinking that we need to let our dogs socialize with every single dog they see out on the street, we end up creating these hyper social creatures that end up being stimulated and frustrated when they see another dog and can't go and say hello.
Right. Yes. And they drag us to the other dog, or they start to get upset and frustrated and they bite at their leash, bark at the other dog, rear up.
Yeah, and we see this a lot in terms of stimulation issues that come in. A lot of the times it's because they've spent too much time at dog parks or too much time at doggy daycare, not enough structure, not enough obedience skills or understanding of how to exist with other dogs around without wanting to be hyper-focused on them and to play with them. So let's talk a little bit about some of the tactics that you use to make sure that you can pass another dog on the street safely without them, without your own dog trying to have this big, elaborate response to just seeing another dog on the street. So, Carol, how do you make sure that happens, that your dogs pay more attention to you than anything else?
So one of the things is, one of the things we often say here, we don't walk our young dogs, we teach them how to walk. So my first things are not walking, or areas where there's necessarily going to be any dogs in close, like no leash freeze. I want my dog to be safe. So I build a ton of value interacting with me, so that by the time my dog sees a dog at the distance, they really don't care. They want to interact with me because I am so much fun. So distance certainly is some of that, making sure I build the value for myself. And then I pattern the behavior I want. So if I've got a young dog and I have to go past other dogs, I'm going to pull out some food or a toy, and I'm going to simply help them go past that other dog. So that's the rehearsal. And if I've built enough value for me, that's usually fairly easy.
Yeah, it really is. And I know a lot of people think, well, if I don't walk my dog, how do I exercise them? And trust us, they get very little exercise on a walk. Just walking around a couple of blocks or walking down the street, it's more about the mental stimulation in that situation than it really is about physical exercise for your dogs. We can exercise our puppies with so many different tactics. Just run and play in the yard with us, not just solo by themselves, but with us. We can do training exercises. We can play tug. We can do all sorts of things that will help drain the energy from our pups, both mentally and physically. Teaching tricks, doing shaping work,
and building a relationship to a lot of those games. We have a number of YouTube videos. One I know is 5 exercises you should do every day with your puppy. I did with Smooch, who was 8 weeks old.
Jamie's border collie Smooch.
Yeah. So, games like that physically and mentally wear out your dog. So you can check out that YouTube, and then that'll take you to a ton more of exercises that we do with young dogs that wear them out physically and mentally at the same time. It teaches some skills, builds some relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I always think of it like, say you have a 3 or 4-year-old child. You don't say, okay, let's go for a walk around the block. No, we do things with our children. Yes. We do, we take them to the playground and they climb on things. Yep. We play games with them. We, have fun with them. We play ball with them. We don't just, okay, I got to take the kid for a walk. I'll be back in 10 minutes.
And then he'll be tired and we'll be able to,
that's
go on with our day.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But I don't know why people think they can do that with their dog.
Yeah, for sure. And so I know another common thought is that I need to walk my dog for the socialization factor. So if we take out the walk, then I won't get the socialization in. So how do we combat that? What are some of your tactics, Swanny, for combating the socialization factor outside of the walk?
For combating, for working?
Yeah, just places you would go, or how would you get that socialization in without the walk?
Well, I use my car. Mm-hmm. So we'll hop in the car and I'll say, you know what? I'm going to drive to, say my dog's ready to see Hamilton City Hall.
Okay.
There's always lots going on around there. You see some interesting people.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
We're going to drive down and we're going to, walk around the City Hall. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm going to say, you know what, let's go over to my parents and expose the dog to the sights and sound at my parents' house.
A little different neighborhood.
A little bit different.
And what does that look like? Are you just hanging out on the front lawn or doing some training on the sidewalk?
Yeah, we'll maybe do some training on the sidewalk. I like to teach the dogs to hang out too. So maybe we're going to sit on their porch and, just get the dog to chill. Maybe we're going to go in the yard and we're going to see different neighbors. I know my parents have a pool behind them. So in the summer, there's all kinds of pool splashes and kids having fun. I'm gonna drive to different places, take the puppy to different spots as they're ready, rather than just walk around my block every day.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and Carol, you were mentioning that you would often drive and just put Fred, who was your pot-bellied pig, put him on the tailgate with you, sit there, and every time a dog would walk by, you would yes and feed, and that built not only an understanding that dogs are not a threat, but also an understanding that they bring positive things through you. So the focus becomes on you. Now, I would ask the same question, but with people as the focus. How do you make sure that your puppies get socialized well to people without necessarily letting them have an interaction with every single person they meet? Again, creating that hypersocial dog that is a little bit of a nightmare to try to walk later on down the road in life.
Right. And similar to Chris, depends on what my puppy's ready for. So, at 8 weeks, it might be going to a little parquet or something, spending 10 minutes, just different smells and stuff. And we play a little game that we've been playing inside that they have value for, a little bit of tug or whatever. Mm-hmm. As they get a little older, it might be going to a little downtown area and grabbing a coffee and sitting. I remember sitting downtown Dundas on a nice day, just finding a spot, sitting with my coffee, and it's great. People are going by, and then, you know, maybe once in a while somebody says, could I pet your dog? Great, because now it's not overwhelming. My pup is comfortable in that area. Now I can take my time, work an appropriate greeting.
Do you ever say no when people ask?
I do. Sometimes, sorry, she's a little shy or she's in training. So I sort of read the person that, you know what, I think, you know, she went through a period where she was a little more nervous of people. And that's when I got her out a little bit more. So I was more interested in just being out around people. Ball games are great. Going to different parks. There's lots of different noises, stuff going on, and I can sort of judge my distance. I take often my chair. I've got it slung over my back and my knapsack, so I'll take coffee's always an issue. So I take my coffee and, you know, I can watch baseball from a bit of different distance. You know, people are there. And again, someone might come over, but by that time, usually my pup's acclimatized to the area. It's not multiple people, and I'm not in motion, so there's different sights and smells. I'm sort of stationary, and then, you know, if my pup's ready, maybe I'll move a little closer to people or whatever. So I want to look for those good where people come along and they seem to have time. It's like, you know what, she's a little shy. Could you just toss some treats? And, you know, if they're comfortable, then, and I can read, is she comfortable in this situation? So it might be no, or thanks for just tossing those treats, or yeah, great, she's quite happy to go see you. And, you know, so just, I'm the same, take it on the road. Doesn't have to be long periods of time. You know, it could be, you know, even shopping malls. I remember going, I don't do any shopping, but when I have a puppy, you know, just going to the outer fringe. There's lots of
scary
cars.
places, malls.
Yeah, and there's cars and there's people, and I'll go on, you know, a time when it's not super busy and just at the distance. So it's different smells, different sounds. There's people around, and, you know, it might be 10, 15 minutes. My dog's comfortable, and that was one brand new experience. I remember with Dell, who had a neurological problem, taking him and a container of treats and even ice cream. So I would get my little bowl, drive up to a place. I would get my little bowl, put one spoonful of ice cream in, open up the van, let him hop out, start licking the ice cream. Before he could finish, I'd move it away, put it back in, because he was a dog that as soon as he got out, what can get me? And he couldn't spend very long in an environment. Again, he was the exception. He had a neurological problem, but it was just, okay, pack it up, go to a new spot. So it was just, I wanted lots and lots of, I get to a new place, I don't care. It's a good experience.
That's great. And sometimes you have to break things down that far. I'll tell you, the only time that I ever get to the mall is when I have a puppy that I want to socialize to. I'm they're not my favorite places.
And
too busy.
Take your puppy into, you know, like stores like Home Depot and Canadian Tire.
Yeah, sometimes check with your area because some communities don't allow it.
Right.
But yes,
but even when I was in New Brunswick, you could take the dogs in the pharmacies. Nice. They were very but I think sometimes we get, you know, one owner spoils it all for everyone. So
sadly, that is the truth.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Another thing that I just wanted to touch on briefly is fear periods. And fear periods can come usually after that critical socialization. There's a brief fear period that might pop up. Sometimes there's a secondary fear period a little bit later down the road during adolescence. So what are your tactics? Carol, I'm going to start with you here. What are your tactics for dealing with fear periods?
And I had to do that with Texas. I think multiple of my young dogs, not my rescues, but my young dogs have had that. Border Collies, I think, are just prone to that. Texas, I just thought, sensitive. Another fear period. So just times where I would suddenly see that spook barking, that high-pitched sort of alert barking, and things that she wouldn't have normally picked out. So again, I want to be nonchalant. I don't want to make a big deal out of these things. I'm not going to make a big deal and try and work through it. I'm just going to knock that off. And I'm going to be aware that I don't want a bad experience during that time. And typically it's going to go away. It's also, for me, was a reminder, man, maybe I haven't done enough noise sensitization. So maybe I need to do a little bit more of that stuff in the safety of the house.
Yeah, for sure. And fear periods can be irrational, out of the blue. You know, basically from one day to the next, you open the crate door and out pops a puppy that is just completely different for whatever reason. And sometimes it seems like it's related to teething pain. Sometimes it seems like it's just out of the blue. There are all sorts of theories, but of course, you know, it just, it happens. And sometimes you don't experience fear periods at all. So, Swanny, what are your tactics with fear periods?
I've never had a dog that's really done anything bizarre in a fear period.
Okay.
I just tend to, you know, I'm aware that it could happen. and I'm very in tune with my dog. And just because, yesterday the garbage truck went by and didn't scare my puppy, it doesn't mean that next week the garbage truck won't go by and scare my puppy. So I'm very aware that puppies, can be much like toddlers. One day, the toddler's peas can touch their meat. The next day, the toddler's peas cannot touch the meat. So I go with the flow. And
it took me a minute to figure that out. I was like, peas touching meat.
That's because you haven't had a toddler.
Peas touching meat.
Yes, yeah. So I'm just aware that, puppies they're developing, they're maturing, they're ever changing. So I'm very aware of my dog. I'm very aware of my environment.
Excellent.
And it's good to point out, sometimes we think puppies when look like a puppy, but they're still puppies even, the 6 months or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So even though they may not look like it anymore,
right?
Still being aware they're still developing and can change.
Yes. Absolutely. Sorry.
I was going to say they have different personalities too. Like I've raised all my puppies very similar. I've raised dogs that have been completely unflappable. And then I've raised dogs that, would be afraid of clowns as well. Like, so, every dog's an individual. And just because this worked well with one puppy doesn't mean it's going to work with the next puppy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a fact. And I think that it's really important to recognize that with a fear period, they are completely irrational. They come out of the blue. They could be, as you said, yesterday the garbage truck was not scary. And today all of a sudden it's terrifying. And typically the entire fear period, if they don't experience anything really awful during, will just reverse itself after a couple of days. And with my own experience with puppies going through fear periods, I've never seen it last a full week. Usually it's...
I did with Texas.
Oh yeah? How long did hers last?
I would say probably like a week and a half, and she had a couple of them. So she was the most extreme, and I probably was lulled into a little more sense of security. And often I've had rescue, so I've had to deal with confidence. But with Texas, it was interesting. She was so physically confident that I think, and that didn't change, but recognizing that she could still be sensitive to other things, and then hit hard with the fear period where she totally suddenly this noise like, oh, now, and it did last a while.
And they're all different. You you don't know what you're going to run into. Yeah. So it's
dogs are a box of chocolates.
They can be. Yeah, absolutely. Look at that. What a great movie. About once a year, I have to watch that movie just to remind myself of what a wonderful world it can be sometimes. Yes. I love that movie. Not that it's based on real life, but
Now I want a box of chocolates though. Now I'm craving one.
Oh, now I want to watch Forrest Gump. All right. Any final thoughts on our socialization chat?
No, that was good talk.
It was good. Yeah. I think just positive experiences.
Yes.
It's not dog to dog play. It's positive experiences.
Absolutely. It's not about the amount of time you put in socializing. It's about the quality of the socialization that goes into the dog. That's perfect.
And don't succumb to sort of peer pressure, because I think the general population is let's dogs work it out. Puppies have to play. Even when I walk past people and it's, oh, can our dog say hi? And I have no idea, or I see a dog that's clearly giving body language, like pulling, and it's like, this could go wrong. It's like, trying to find the right term because, oh, sorry, she's in training.
Yeah.
I don't want her meeting all dogs. Oh, come on, Sam. They don't want to meet us, right. So it's like there's so much of our friends and family who, let them play. You're your advocate for your dog.
Yes,
You'd hate 100%. To, after the fact, say, oh, I should have stepped in and done something.
Yes, absolutely. And just because somebody that you know and hang out with has a dog doesn't mean that that is going to be a good playmate for your own dog. So keep that in mind. Always, I have a really well-read article called The Trouble with Dog-to-Dog Play. So if you search for that on the McCannDogs.com website, there's a list of all of my must-haves before I let my dogs play with another dog. So hopefully that'll be enlightening as well. Alrighty, this has been a fun episode to record. Carol, thank you for coming into the studio
pleasure.
Again, and Swanny, of course, as always.
Thank you, Shannon.
Well, you're welcome.
We never thank you.
That's okay, but I do like to be thanked, so I'm good with it. Thank you.
We take you for granted.
Right, yes. Shannon's like an old shoe.
I'm okay with that. As long as I get to hang out with you young shoes, I'm good with it. On that note, I'm Instructor Shannon.
I'm Instructor Carol.
Instructor Swanny.
Happy training.
The McCann Dogs Podcast is brought to you by McCann Professional Dog Trainers. we help dog owners to have a well-behaved, four-legged family member. Please give us a call at 905-659-1888 or visit us at mccandogs.com. Happy training!